Hi, everybody. Welcome to the launch webinar of Salesframe 2.0. It's great to see that we have so many people here. We have over 100 people on the lines, and mainly current users and even some of the new ones. My name is Petteri Halonen, and I am Account Director of Salesframe. I will be hosting today's event with our CEO, Lauri Ruhala, and Sweden's Managing Director, Jonathan Sjöholm. Today's agenda will be first few words from Lauri. After that, we have a short introduction of what the new sales frame brings. And of course, we will be also showing a little bit demo of what it actually means in the real life. But next, let's hear some of the words of our CEO, Lauri. Your turn.
Good morning, everybody, and greetings from my cottage in the middle of Finland. When planning this webinar, I assumed that the weather would be nice and sunny and it would be amazing to film this outside, but it seems that Finland has caught up with us and you can actually see my breath. But anyway, they say that if you're not embarrassed with the first version of your product, you probably launched too late. And I can tell you that we didn't launch too late. So 5 years ago, when I became CEO of Salesframe, we decided to completely build a new product. And about a year later, so in 2017, we had our minimum viable product. So those who are familiar with the industry, that's what we would call our MVP. So 4 years ago, we had our minimum viable product. And we started selling that. And a lot of you here today are people who have seen that new first version of the product. And a lot of you are from clients that we got already in the beginning of 2017. Our MVP was basically a prototype. And accidentally, now this is a happy accident, but accidentally, we ended up getting so many clients that our MVP actually became the product. So for the last few years, the tool that you've been using and the tool that we've been developing has been an enhanced prototype. But we always knew that we need to do something about this, that we can do better. So about 2 years ago, we decided to start developing a completely revamped version of Salesframe. We have thousands of users. There's hundreds today on the line. We have thousands of users in the tool. We've gotten a lot of feedback from many different industries, companies where you sell within 15 minutes of the first interaction, and companies who sell within the first 15 years of the first interaction. So very different types of salespeople using this tool, and we've gotten a lot of feedback. And we've been developing this, and we're really excited to show you a little bit of what we've come up with. Usually when people talk about sales, they talk about either one of two things. And I think those of us who are in sales, what we hear the most is the macro side of sales. And what I mean by that is sales process, sales management. So we're talking opportunities, leads, we're talking forecasting. Basically, when people are often talking about sales, they're actually talking about CRM. And while there's nothing wrong with that, what we wanted to focus on with Salesframe was the micro side of things, the actual business of selling. So people who are not in the industry, people who are not salespeople, when they think of selling, they think about how you convince people. And they think about the sales pitches. And we wanted to think about that too. How do you actually communicate with clients? How do you actually interact with clients? And the whole core of what Salesframe is all about is two types of interactions. One is a live interaction. So when you're in the micro, when you're meeting clients, the live interaction, how can we help salespeople in that moment, regardless of whether it's face-to-face or online? I'm sure a lot of us have had a lot of online over the last year and a half. But how can we help people in the live interaction is one thing. But the other thing is, and especially over the last year and a half, the amount of communication that's happening in a not so live, so kind of in an indirect situation, has increased a lot. So obviously emails, there are even more of them just flying around these days, but the amount of chatting on WhatsApp everywhere, on Teams. So it's become a lot more common, and it's become a lot more common between salesperson and customer. So we wanted to also help that kind of communication. And what at the end of the day that means is that we've basically built a tool where you can build presentations very quickly, regardless of wherever you are. You can play them very quickly. And when you send them and share them to clients, you can also track those presentations. So the idea is not only to have a tool that helps with the actual live situation, but also have a tool that helps with the indirect situation when you're sending information to clients, etc. So basically, our whole philosophy here is that we've built a tool where it's all about building it, playing it, sharing it, and tracking it. And more here to tell you more about that tool is Petteri and Jonathan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lauri. And I totally agree with you that over the past year, when I've had conversations with multiple customers and users of Salesframe, I've always heard that, especially last year, changed the way they are using Salesframe. Even though, like you mentioned in the beginning, that we have wide scope of different kind of users. Some people have 15-minute sales process, sales cycle. Some have years even. But what last year changed was that there was so much more these kind of contact points with the customers where you aren't necessarily live and you need to reach out so that they remember you. And that has been one of the key ideas behind the new version. And about that, next, Jonathan will tell a little bit more what the update means. And now we have focused strongly on the salespersons, on the user side, and in the upcoming months and quarters, we will be also developing the whole new admin side and analytics on that part. But let's jump into the actual Salesframe tool because we are overall talking about Salesframe today. So let's do Jonathan.
Can you hear Jonathan?
Jonathan.
There we go. Sorry,
No, we
technical
can.
mishap. I tried to stay muted so I didn't interrupt anyone before.
You have way too modern headset for you.
Yeah, I know.
Get these old school ones.
I'm gonna look into that. But thank you very much, Petteri. As he said, I'm gonna be mentioning, I would call it maybe 4 of our core functions that we actually have in the platform. 3 of them are going to be quite familiar to you who has already used Salesframe before, with one that's actually a new one. So if you want to kick things off, we're actually moving on to the first and kind of a new function here at Salesframe. It's going to look very familiar to what many of you have used before as well, of course, but it's more of the actual build it function. So when we're speaking about build it, we're talking about building the presentation before your meeting, or maybe building a presentation that you actually want to share with a customer or even a colleague. So here you will find the structure that you who have used it before are kind of used to, but in a different view. So here you're going to be able to, in a more, not in a live environment, but in a more preparing environment, actually put together a solid presentation, actually access all of your content, no matter if it's slides, it might be videos, or even embedded content such as calculators or even 3D. So you are more or less going to be able to actually create all of your presentations with the different type of materials here.
Yeah, and many of our customers, they have contact centers, they might have customer service using this. So then it's really valuable when you are not having the customer facing situation. You need to, with fewer clicks, search material, send it to a customer. And of course, like you mentioned, Jonathan, it's really good when you are just preparing for the meeting, either meeting about to start in 10 minutes or the one starting on the next day.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think we have another feature also that is going to be a view that many of you are much more used to, that you're going to be showing later on, Petteri. But this is really a great place for, just what you said, if you want to prepare it a day before or just minutes before your meeting. So we could move on to, one of the core features here, of course, actually playing it and showing your presentation for your customer or even an internal meeting. So here is very familiar to many of you who's used it before. You more or less have your presentation deck, and from here you are able to navigate through the content. You might want to reorganize something right before the meeting. You have a big advantage of actually having a branded play section or presentation section, where you get a whole other type of impressive like visual effects and stuff like that. So here's more or less the section where you said you can play it, you can present it, and you can also reorganize it even in middle of the meeting. A really good feature here that I like is just to be able to pop up a certain piece of content. You might get a question mid-meeting that you are planning to come to on a bit later in the presentation. So instead of saying, oh, hold up, it's coming, you can actually directly access it in a really, really quick and smooth way.
And that's actually a really good point, retaining the momentum in a meeting, because just a couple of weeks ago, I had a user training for the new version of Salesframe for people who had already been using Salesframe for years. And that was one of the features they really enjoyed, that when you have prepared beforehand, but the bigger the audience is, the more common it will be that there will be questions that you haven't prepared for. So then it's really important that in the middle of a meeting, you can jump out from the presentation that you made before and find the material really quick. Because we all know a situation that when customer has asked something tricky that you don't know necessarily, and you might even want to show some material to him, but you don't know where to find it. You have to stop sharing the screen. You might even have to send it afterwards, and then you have lost the momentum because customer doesn't remember anymore why this was critical for me, why I was so interested of it. So that was a really good point to stand out, that you are able to enable the momentum, so it's actually beneficial for you.
That's a word.
Able to enable.
No, but I really do think that's a key thing to take away also. Just looking from my previous experience, you kind of set in the presentation that you have, but here you have a whole other level of flexibility and just be able to actually react on the fly with anything that might come up.
And if I can just add a point, it's the little things. Like as salespeople, we're all used to the fact that we've got plenty of PowerPoints on our computer or on our network drive, etc. And then when we're in a client meeting, it's a real pain in the what to switch around between those live. So a lot of us, we actually don't even want to start digging our SharePoint or our network drive when we're in a meeting. And here, just popping it up is really easy and quick. So it's a direct advantage to having a better conversation.
Yeah, and today we will, after this short intro, we will go a little bit deeper on what's actually new, especially in the Plate, which we call nowadays showroom. So there is quite nice, fancy new features that we have received a lot of positive feedback. So we will be telling about those more in a little later. But shall we jump to the next slide then?
Yes, let's do it. So the next feature is also one that many of you might be familiar with already, but that we have made really, really exciting improvements on, honestly. The share it feature, it might happen before or even during or after your presentation, but regardless of when you actually use the feature, you're able to share the presentation or the content that you have put together for that customer or even internally. So with the easy click of, I think it's two clicks on the button, you are actually able to either share the presentation they put together with your colleagues so they can use it in their meetings, or it might just be information that's beneficial for them. But with our focus in sales, of course, sharing it to your customers. So the thing here is that you actually do share a unique website, or what we like to call a memo site, where they actually are able to access all the content. And here's also the great benefit of not being a PDF. If you have added in a calculator or any embedded content, something that the receiver or customer can actually interact with, they can still use the content. So you get the full benefit of the content that you actually have produced for your sales department. So anything from all the content that I mentioned before, videos, even 3D solutions could actually work on these memo sites. There is another reason why we're also using memo sites over the PDF, and that's of course I'm going to come into on the next slide, and that's more of the tracking thing of feature of things, where you know that you can actually get the insight of how they receive your content. You can just quickly jump back, Petri. I'm going to come back to this in just a moment because I really wanted to mention this added feature that we didn't have before. I think everyone at Salesframe used it in a lot, to put it lightly. Just the other day, I think I recorded over 50 videos to send out to different people, actually introducing new features to them as well. And that's that you can now do recordings when you send out your memo site. So what you more or less will do is you have your presentation prepared, you create a memo site, you give it a name and title, and then before you send it off to your customers, you actually can record a personal video greeting now. And this is beneficial on many, many points. Of course, you get the personal touch, but you're also able to quickly highlight what you actually added into the content for them. So what you have added in your presentation, you can give them a quick introduction to it. And if you're a little bit of a statistical nerd like I am, many of us at Salesframe are, if you just look at the data and what actual video message do for you when you're sharing it with customers and even colleagues, it's really, really impressive numbers. And I think it's a awesome feature that we now have added in, and I hope that many of you will also get the benefit of using. And Lauri,
If I can add on that, like video messaging has existed before, but the combination of having the videos and content is a bit new now, and it's also something that you guys, I really recommend you start using it once you get your hands on the new version of Salesframe. As an example of use cases where I've personally used it, obviously we're a heavily new business orientated organization, and I know some of you are in the key account side of things. But either way, if you're contacting new people, whether you're prospecting or just meeting new people at a current customer, for example, the video recording is a great way to explain why they should discuss with you. Now, compare this with a phone call, first of all, because a phone call is obviously a live moment and you do reach them, you can have that conversation there. But when you compare it with a phone call, you're always interrupting their day when you're calling somebody. But if you send an email, you send a LinkedIn message, you send a WhatsApp or something, yes, that message does interrupt them for a moment, but they're going to have time on their own time to watch that video. So just little things like prospecting, I've noticed that cases where I've added video greetings into my prospecting message, people I've never met before, I'm cold emailing them, or I'm cold sending cold LinkedIn messages to them. When there's a video greeting, the hit rate goes up by quite a bit. So it is absolutely tremendously useful to use powerful words here. But also in
but you
also
actually even received feedback from it, right? Directly
yes,
from
like absolutely, like literally yesterday, and this sounds like it's a sales story, but it's actually true. So literally yesterday, I got feedback from a Romanian guy living in France who had a difficult to pronounce first name, and when I went through the trouble of figuring out how to pronounce his name and sent him a video message, he actually replied to me directly saying how much he appreciated that and how the video impressed him. So it's just the little things like that you can also you see the amount of personal touch you can do with that. It's a good point.
Yeah, and I have to say that even though like all three of us, we have used video greeting in some form for the past year. Earlier, we had to add it separately. It wasn't able to or possible to do it right away in the when creating the memo site inside Salesframe. But we have still recorded a lot of videos, and I thought that I got sort of like used to it. But then after I received these kind of video greetings from customers or from people who were maybe even trying to sell something to me, I was interested. I had to listen that, okay, he maybe took like 1 minute to prepare for it, because there were some small details that I knew that, okay, this wasn't so generic thing he was saying, but still it got me thinking that, wow, yeah, this actually works, because it's much more personal and it sort of brings humanity even to the remote work when you are just sending messages. And I also have to mention just the features that were also possible earlier. But the idea that I was quite frustrated earlier when I had to always add different attachment to emails. When I was sending PowerPoints, I was sending Excels, I was sending videos, anything. I had multiple different attachments, and even though if I saved them all as a PDF, I still had multiple different attachments, and then you can go to our website from here. So it was difficult also for a customer. But when you can not only on a live meeting have it in one place, but also when sending it to a customer, it's much cleaner, much faster, much easier for all of us.
That's absolutely true. Shall we take a quick look at tracking it and then actually show what the tool looks like?
Sounds good.
That's
Sounds
a good idea.
So I shortly touched on it. The reason why we have Memo Site is to actually be able to track how it's received, the content we share over. And again, I'm gonna sound a little bit repetitive here, but for you who's already used Salesframe, you already have gotten some insight of this. You were notified that someone had opened it, but I really got excited when we saw this new feature, even internally when we started testing it out, because as a salesperson, to be able to get the insight that we now do from the materials that we do share with our customers, it's really incredible for multiple reasons. It's many systems, to be honest, that can tell you when someone have clicked on a link. That's nothing that's brand new today, but on top of that, with the Memo Site, that we're actually able to do right now is that you as a salesperson or sales professional can go into the follow-up module, even by getting a notification on your home screen or via email that someone has opened the content you've shared. You can now go in, look at that specific piece of content, and not only see when they clicked, how long they looked at it, but you can actually break it down per individual piece of content, slide, video, or whatever it might be, and see how long time they spent on it. So I see this as a huge benefit in sales, on the follow-up situation for me when I'm about to reach out to the customer again. First, of course, timing. I might not want to reach out right away when they open it, or I maybe do actually. It depends on the case, of course. But the biggest thing here is that I can see where you have spent the most amount of time. So if I share, let's say, 5 slides with you, you maybe put an average of a minute or 30 seconds on each slide. But there's one piece of content that you actually end up spending 5 or 10 minutes on. It's quite easy to figure out what I should bring up as the first topic when I reach out to you again. So this gives you an incredible amount of actually information of what your customer is interested in and what you should be focusing your efforts on. Not only to, benefit your sales situation, but also create more value for your customer in that way, bringing up topics that's interesting or relevant to him or her. So we are able to now track that on multiple levels as well, because it's quite common that when I share something, maybe even the minute after I've sent you an email, you actually open the email up, you go in on the link and you say, okay, good, I'll have a look at that later. So what we now can do is that we can actually break down the individual sessions, that we call them. So a session is each time you actually look on the content that we shared. So then I can see the first time you maybe spent 1 minute on all of the content, but the second time you spent 3, and the third time you spent 5. And that's actually a trend that at least I've been seeing. I don't know about you guys, but I've been seeing a trend of, for each session that they actually, or each time they actually click on the content I shared, they spend more time on the content and they actually narrow down their interest even more. So once again, you get even more data for yourself on what's relevant to this customer.
Yeah, that's just on point. And what I've also noticed, the same thing is that, like you mentioned, when you open it first time or the couple first times, you just scroll through. But the more you read about it, the more you get interested as a customer. It's huge benefits for salesperson that you are able to see different opening times, different sessions. Because of course, if you think about first time opening half a minute, second time opening 10 minutes, third time opening 15 minutes, but the average is still less than 10 minutes. So of course, it's huge improvement, and I really like it that it helps me to be more insightful. It helps me to bring more value for a customer, and Even it doesn't matter, because something that customers quite often think about and ask from me in different sessions is that, okay, it works really well when you are pitching to a new potential customer, because then you know if they have looked only on the price or if they have actually taken a look about the benefit and value slides. But I also believe that when you are working with the people you already know, you have been working with them for years, with the current customers, it also gives you insights then, because uh, quite often when you buy from the same people, you buy from the same company, you might even buy the same products and services year after year. It creates routines. And even though the sales rep tells you interesting stories and interesting stuff, you still in a hurry just repeat the previous order. But when a salesperson is able to see that, okay, he ordered the same thing again, but actually I see that he has spent a lot of time in these new services I was talking about. So maybe I still once more will contact him and tell what kind of value this actually would bring to the customer's business. And that way it's huge benefit also for working with current customers. And of course, on the tracking side, that's what we have now been focusing, and today we will be focusing is the actual end user, the salesperson. But of course, it gives insights to the management, like marketing management admins who are creating the sales material, so that the materials actually support the conversations salespersons are having with the customers, that they actually fit and are more influencing. Because we all know a situation that you have a lot of questions from customers, but you don't have any material to send them. Then you start creating it by yourself after a meeting, and everybody repeats this in our organization. But how we have actually changed this behavior in our own organization is that when we have questions asked from customers and or by customers, and we don't have any slides for those, after a meeting we will create new material. So the next time I have this kind of situation, somebody is asking me from technology on the background or something like that, I am able to at least on some level talk about that and show material. So if in a next meeting there surprisingly instead of salespeople there is also CTO, I am able to have a conversation with that CTO. So that kind of information and enabling sales on all the different levels really brings value for everybody.
Yeah, great point. Great point to actually use it for multiple situations there. And it's more just what you said. It's about creating content that enables the discussions that you do want to have. You might have created content that do perform very highly, or some content that perform poorer but then you can kind of pivot how you use the content that you have and enable the sales people to perform even better. We're more or less done here. I just want to quickly mention also the last bullet point we have here. It's the actual possibility now with integrating Salesframe with different type of systems. For most of you, this would probably be most relevant for the CRM system, where we can actually now send data to the customer card about what presentations or what content has been shared with them. So it's just a nice little extra feature here, so you already in your CRM also can see that information. So I just wanted to quickly mention that as well.
Before we continue with the demo, sorry, Petteri, I did want to point out one overall thing about the whole tool now, regardless of all the different areas that we're going to navigate today. And that is that we really have tried here to bring you a tool that does not look like enterprise software. I'm just talking look and feel here. But we really want to be the Spotify of sales tools, so to speak. So we want this to give you, to give you a wow effect every time you're using it. it has to look good, and it has to be something that you enjoy using. And we really, really don't want it to look like a 1990s Microsoft program. All due respect to those. So that is something we focused very heavily on here, and I hope when you guys start using this, you'll get that feeling too.
That was just on point, but shall we jump into the actual tool next?
Please.
So, today we will have a quick overview of the main new functions and features that the showroom module brings. In the user trainings, which we will be arranging for all the customers when we implement the new version of Salesframe, we will go through more deeply into the different areas of Salesframe. But today, the idea is that you get a basic overview of what the actual new version means. But let's take a look. So just like before, you are able to navigate in the structure. You can have, like we already talked, you can have multiple different types of materials. You can just search there, jump into the library, add the files to the presentation, just like before. But what we have actually changed here, for example, is something what was so often asked by new users, is that when you choose the files, quite often you might just wonder that, okay, now when I've chosen these, how can I add these to the presentation? So just like on Spotify, when you choose the songs, you have to add them to the playlist. Or when you are buying something online, when you choose the products, you have to add them to the shopping cart. And you might have noticed when I move around here, we have this small toolbar. We have some of the old features here. You can take a look how it actually looks on a bigger screen, or you can maybe flag some content. That means that when you flag something, you can right away comment and communicate to the admins that, okay, this is out of date, this has some problems in it, this is in a wrong folder. But of course, it doesn't always have to be only negative things. It can also be like something, okay, we have really great materials in this folder, but I feel that we still need some kind of summary page. But the idea here, and also what I've heard from multiple customers already, is that really often you find yourself in a situation that you are in a sales meeting and the manager is asking you, okay, we made these really nice new slides there. Have you used those? Have you talked about those with the customers? And then you think that, okay, yeah, there was something wrong, but just can't remember what it was. There was something I wanted to point out. So if you don't write it somewhere, you don't remember it afterwards in a meetings when somebody's asking that from you, and you just think that, okay, maybe it wasn't anything important. But this way, the internal communication also gets better, because that's something we can always improve. And of course, you can here write also the open answer. And then really nice feature that I like myself is starring. You can choose your favorite slides, add them to the start ones. And this is really handy when you, for example, have some material that you always send to a customer, but it a little bit depends on specific customers which one you send. And all of these are from different topics, different folders. So this way I can save my time, and I don't have to download anything into my own laptop where it will just get old. And it's always up to date also. And this will jump into here. But now we have added 3 slides. Let's take a look. We can jump into the other folder. Let's go library mode. We can add these also to the presentation. But of course, this is something you are always used to, adding different PowerPoint slides and stuff. But we can also include videos. Let's take Lauri from here. And we can have embedded content. And now embedded content, that brings a lot of different possibilities. That brings a lot of different ideas how you can be more influencing in customer meetings. So everything that has basically URL, everything that is online can pretty much be embedded inside Salesframe. So when you are sending material either before meeting, after meeting, or in the middle of meeting, you can use different views and tools. And a lot of our customers, for example, use these kind of pre-made forms, which you send to a customer before the first meeting. Then customer fills out, okay, this is the level we are on, this is the goal we want to reach, and the salesperson gets information, gets more insights about how to conversate on the next meeting, but also the customer already gets information and value from the start. But let's keep it tight because we are already almost out of time. So we have here, you can add new file, you can add a link, for example. So if you have for example, you want to link your own web page, that's easily possible. And we can also create slides for the pre-made slide templates we might have inside Salesframe. But let's not do those now. But what you might want to do still is now when we have collected from multiple different folders is that you want to change the order. You want to go through that, okay, let's put Lauri to the beginning. So he's there now. And then we just save this.
Well, Petteri is saving. Quick mention about adding your own content in there. This has been a big feedback that users want to add their own materials into the presentation. It is super quick now. You don't need to go out of the presentation state to add new files. You can do it very quickly. So that's a big, big, big benefit in this new version.
Yeah, that is true that nowadays it's much more easier because there is a situations where you have to create for specific big deal you are having a customer with, or you have some calculations or Excels or something that are just customer specific. But let's take a look how it looks now. So we have the video here. We have different basic slides here. And we also have embedded content. We can change these calculations here and it automatically changes. And this is quite useful when you are creating a value in a meeting. You're going to have different kind of Power BI views. For example, this kind of dashboard is quite common nowadays and just getting more common. Something that also is quite often is that people might even include and enable CRM dashboards for the internal meetings. You can have these kind of 360 videos, which create a lot more value when you are showing it. And it's a lot easier when it's not only like you have to jump out from PowerPoint to the to the web page, or you have to browse through different channels. And of course, you can have your website here. But let's now share it to a customer. Create a Memo Site. And now I will turn off my camera so you will be able to see me here. Hi, this is a video of reading. Let's not preview it, but this is what we were talking about earlier, because this is so useful and easy and fast. It always takes me, like when I start thinking some content I want to write after a meeting to a customer, and it takes easily tens of minutes when I start creating black and white PowerPoints or emails. But when I just think, okay, 1 minute of thinking what I'm going to say, 1 or 2 takes, it's 2 minutes. It's much faster, but also much more influencing. And just like before, you can add cover letter, you can add next steps, but what we have new here is also you can add expiry date. You can choose which date, for example, if you have a campaign going on, and this is really popular, for example, on banking industry, on pharma, where you have critical information that you don't want to show afterwards. But even if the customer opens the link afterwards, you will get a notification about it. And of course, like we talked earlier, you can sync it with CRM, for example.
Petri, just one thing to add in there when you were mentioning within pharma or even banking, that it might be that you only want to show it for a certain set of time. Just to add in there, there might also be content that is added into Salesframes that actually restricted content. And that's, of course, more from the admin side of things, but for peace of mind for all our salespeople out there, if it is content that we should not share, it might be, a customer case that you can talk about and actually show, but you're not allowed to share it to someone else. From the admin point of view, they can actually put a restriction on it so that you can't share that content. So for salespeople out there, can just feel calm about that they won't actually share something that they shouldn't be sharing as well.
Yeah, that is a good point that raises every now and then that you can actually do that also. And just like before, you can either copy it straight, opening an email, or just take a look how it looks in a browser. And this is also the view that the customer will be having. They can integrate with the videos, they can look about those, they can watch these different materials here, and they can also interact. For example, if we have a web page in the end, so let's see, my internet is loading, but they can also interact with these. These are working the same way, and it's quite often a good way to sort of raise the customer's interest when you just show some nice embedded content just a little bit in a customer meeting, because you don't want to watch video in a meeting, for example. But if you just show a teaser, send material, it might be the reason why customer opens the material the first time. But after that, they will also take a look about the other slides, other content you have there. So that's also nice idea to remember. And like we have here, you can also have the chat integrated among
Excuse me,
other things.
Petteri. Just pointing it out there for viewers who have tight schedules that we've run out of the full 45 minutes. I'm sure we'll be continuing for a couple minutes longer to go to close the event. But if you have to go now and you've been here for this long, thank you for participating from my part and our parts.
Yeah, from our parts also.
Yeah, them too.
Yeah, but let's continue a couple of minutes. I think now we have managed through all the basic functions we have, or pretty much all the basic functions inside Salesframe, the showroom version, which is today's agenda. But how do you guys feel, Jonathan and Lauri? What kind of questions you might have?
I would be very curious to see example data. So even though I know nobody has opened that link you just created, I would be curious to see very quickly what the slide specific data looks like. If you can show that without showing, obviously, customer cases. So do you think that would be possible to show the tracking module?
Well, it's not possible without showing customer cases.
Fair enough. You can zoom in though, so I would do that maybe, but no worries. No worries. In that case, I think the most important things to understand here is that we'll obviously send you some information afterwards about the tracking, so that's one thing, but we haven't taken a look at the build module at all, and obviously we haven't taken a look at the tracking module either. But a good thing to understand is that a lot of our customers are now starting to add internal content here as well. So Salesframe doesn't only have to be a tool of customer-facing materials. Obviously, that's the focus, but The fact that we've added new ways to share folders internally with different users, so you can have a shared folder between several salespeople internally, and the fact that you can restrict content from being sent, etc., has meant that there are more and more internal process descriptions, training material, things like this also being used in the tool. What else comes to your mind, guys?
That was a good point, that the difference between build and showroom. And of course, admins might think that, okay, does this mean double work for me? No, it doesn't. By default, the structures are same, but it just creates a lot of different possibilities to differentiate and have separately internal, separately customer meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Something that customers think and ask quite often is that, how about if I have offline? How about if I know that internet connection, there's a high chance that the internet connection isn't working? So for that solution, we have actually coming up also the new Salesframe offline app. And the idea behind that is, now when we have been referring to Spotify, is quite similar. You can choose your favorite presentation and save them on the offline app. And this is really useful when you are preparing for a meeting and you are going to a customer, but you know that you have to work offline. And now when the situation is getting a little bit better, we will be in the future having more and more live meetings again. So that's something quite commonly is asked, at least by me.
Well, fair enough. Since we're already 5 minutes overboard, I think we should call it at this point. Those of you who already have the new version of Salesframe in use, I think we can all recommend you to immediately start trying the video recordings and sending content and tracking it, but also to familiarize yourself with the other new features, including the build module, etc. But from all of us, thank you very much. Peter and Jonathan, do you have any closing words?
If there's any questions afterwards, you can send an email to my calendar invite, or you can contact your admin on Salesframe side, and we can continue from there. But it was a pleasure having this webinar, and hopefully we see you guys soon again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.